My sister lied to my dad's face, saying I was abusing her, with our grandma coaching her. I finally threw them both out. A year later, grandma's standing on our porch, wanting another chance. Me and my entire family all hate my grandma on my dad's side, except for, well, my dad. It all started when I was 7 years old, because whenever we were all at a restaurant together and I was ordering, she would pinch my arm and tell me I was disgustingly skinny, and I needed to eat more otherwise I would die alone. She would then plaster this look of pity on her face as if she felt really bad for me. For context, my mom is Asian and my dad is Irish, so me and my siblings were all Asian baddies, aka naturally skinny, but her comments always made me really insecure, especially since I always ate exactly the amount I wanted to LOL. And to make things worse, my dad gave her a spare key to our house, so once in a while when we were all fast asleep, she would barge right in and start going through all our things. My mom's files, me and my siblings' shared wardrobe, everything. And since she refused to wear adult diapers, she would always leave poop stains around our home, including the radiator, the couch, and all the chairs. Ugh, literally grosses me out to even think about. Anyway, since I'm the oldest, when I turned 15, my mom finally told me the tea. Before me and my siblings were born, my granny always made racist comments to my mom. Sometimes she'd raise her eyes until they looked like slits and say, "Hey, see, now we look the same." And whenever my mom would cook meals for them, ones that took hours to make by the way, she'd scream, "No, don't tell me you cooked the dog, lame af," and I kept all my mom's gossip from my sibs and dad. But my brother hated her regardless, lol. But my little sister Millie, on the other hand, she was always a little rebellious. My parents could say the sky was blue, and she would argue that it was purple. Always wanted to disagree. So when she turned 12, she chose to become my granny's little doll. She started off by making racist jokes, like a pick-me, but for race instead of gender. Sometimes she'd go through our mom's files and send photos to Granny. But the breaking point came when we finally moved house and Granny no longer had a spare key, because Millie took the liberty of printing her a new one. That's when I finally fessed up to my mom to watch out for her. She told me she'd keep an eye out, but we both figured it wouldn't cause any major problems. I was 16 when my granny's 85th birthday was coming up. My dad said that one of us, my brother or sister, had to plan it, and if they didn't do a good job, then they'd find themselves sleeping outside for the rest of the year. You see, I had already volunteered dozens of times to be the one to step up and hang out with her, so I guess my dad wanted my siblings to put in effort too. But if you're the oldest child, then you understand that title means constantly doing shit you don't want to do. So when Millie came to me right after my dad left and asked if I could plan it and pretend like she was the one to do it, I immediately agreed. It was just easier that way. Fast forward to my granny's big day. I themed the entire thing as St. Patrick's Day, since that was the day that my granny's birthday fell on. And, as you can probably tell, she is mad patriotic. I made everyone wear jerseys, there were shamrocks everywhere, and for dinner we had homemade roast chicken with roast potatoes and boiled carrots. A classic. As soon as the chicken came out of the oven, my sister shouted, "Ugh, I did such a good job. This chicken is amazing." I just rolled my eyes and let her have her fun. But as we sat down, my granny started praising her. "Millie, did you really do all this? All for me?" She then put her hand on her heart as if she was really touched. "Yes, I did. You know Tara," my name, was insisting that I cook Asian-style duck, but I said F no, while my sister threw her head back and laughed. My dad and granny both stared at me with their fists clenched, but the meal was so good that they were soon distracted, and everything was fine again. Or so I thought, because just 10 minutes later, Millie said something that changed the energy of the whole room. "You know, this whole time Tara has been stopping me from doing stuff for you, Granny. She said she's the only one who's capable out of the three of us." My idiot dad believed her straight away. I guess it was easier than accepting that we all hated his mother. Immediately he stood up and dragged me into the bedroom upstairs, right in front of everyone. And right as he raised his arm up to strike my behind, I cried out, "She's lying! I planned this entire dinner!" He froze midair. I braced myself, wondering if he was still going to hit me. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the uncertainty. Instead, he stormed out to grab Millie. I followed him downstairs, shaking. My legs felt like they might give out at any moment. My dad confronted Millie in front of everyone, demanding to know the truth. Millie immediately burst into tears. "Tara's lying again. She always does this," she sobbed, looking at Granny for support. Her tears seemed to appear on command, like she had a faucet behind her eyes she could turn on whenever needed. "She's always trying to make me look bad." Granny jumped right in, putting her arm around Millie. "Your oldest has always been jealous of poor Millie. I've seen it for years." She shook her head sadly, like she was disappointed in me. "It's that Asian blood in her. Makes her devious." The room went silent at her blatant racism. Even my dad looked uncomfortable, but he didn't correct her. My mom tried to step in. "That's not true. Tara has been—" "Stay out of this." My dad snapped at her. "This is between my daughters and me." My mom flinched at his tone but fell silent. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the familiar resignation. I couldn't believe what was happening. "Dad, I literally spent 3 days planning this. I made the shopping list, I decorated everything, I cooked all the food. I have blisters on my hands from kneading that bread." I held out my hands to show him, but he wouldn't even look. Millie cried harder. "She's just saying that because she's jealous that you like my party better than anything she's ever done." Her voice rose to a wail that seemed to pierce right through my dad's skepticism. My brother tried to speak up. "Dad, I saw Tara cooking all day." "Enough." My dad held up his hand. "Tara, you're grounded indefinitely. I'm sick of your lies and your jealousy." I stood there in shock. "But I'm telling the truth." Granny clicked her tongue. "Such a troublemaker. Always has been." My dad pointed to the stairs. "Go to your room, now." I looked at my mom for help, but she just gave me a helpless look. I knew she couldn't stand up to my dad when he was like this. As I headed upstairs, I heard Millie sniffling dramatically while Granny comforted her. "Poor dear, having to deal with such a sister," Granny said loud enough for me to hear. The next few days were miserable. I was confined to my room except for meals and bathroom breaks. My phone was confiscated and I wasn't allowed to use the computer. Meanwhile, Millie was getting special treatment for being traumatized by my false accusations. She'd walk past my room humming happily, occasionally stopping to whisper "liar" through the crack in the door. I overheard Granny talking to my dad in the kitchen. "I've always worried about Tara's behavior. This jealousy isn't normal. Perhaps she needs professional help." My dad sighed. "Maybe you're right, Mom." I couldn't believe it. They were actually discussing sending me to therapy because I told the truth. The worst part was watching Millie smirk at me whenever our parents weren't looking. She was enjoying this. She had Granny as her ally, and together they were turning my dad against me. One night, my brother sneaked into my room. "I know you're telling the truth," he whispered. "Millie's She's been bragging to her friends about how she tricked everyone. At least someone believed me, but what could we do? My dad was completely under Granny's spell, and Millie was learning all her manipulation tactics. I needed to find a way to expose them both before things got even worse. But with no phone, no computer, and basically under house arrest, I had no idea how I was going to do it. All I knew was that I couldn't let them win. Somehow, I had to make my dad see the truth about his precious mother and his increasingly manipulative younger daughter. After a week of being grounded, I started noticing my stuff disappearing. First, it was small things. My favorite hair clip, a bracelet my mom gave me for my birthday, a few dollars from my emergency stash. I immediately suspected Millie, but without proof, there was no point in saying anything. My dad would just accuse me of making more false accusations. One afternoon, I was dusting the living room, one of the few times I was allowed out of my room, when I overheard Millie on the phone in the kitchen. She was talking in this fake, sweet voice that she only used when she was up to something. "Yes, Granny, I'll get more of Mom's papers for you. Tara's still grounded, so she can't stop me," she giggled. Dad totally believes me about everything now. I froze, duster in hand. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. "I know. I'll take more of Tara's stuff and hide it in Mom's closet. Then I'll tell Dad that Mom is stealing from her own daughter. He'll be so mad." I nearly dropped the duster. They were planning to frame my mom now? This was getting way out of control. I needed to tell someone, but who would believe me? My dad was completely under their spell, and my mom was already walking on eggshells around everyone. I snuck closer to the kitchen door, trying to hear more of their plan. But just as Millie was saying something about getting rid of Mom for good, my dad walked in the front door. I quickly pretended to be dusting again. "What are you doing?" he asked, eyeing me suspiciously. "Just cleaning, like you told me to," I said, trying to sound casual. He grunted and walked past me. I heard Millie quickly end her call and greet Dad with her usual fake enthusiasm. I needed to warn my mom, but how? That night, my brother Bradley snuck into my room again. He'd been my only ally through this whole nightmare. "I borrowed this from my friend Jordan," he whispered, pulling a small flip phone from his pocket. "It's old, but it works. You can use it to record Millie and Granny when they're plotting." I could have hugged him. "Bradley, you're a lifesaver. Just be careful," he warned. "If Dad catches you with this, we're both dead." The next day, Granny came over to help around the house, which really meant criticizing everything my mom did and making racist comments disguised as jokes. Dad thought it was a great idea to have her supervise my chores since I was still grounded. "Maybe Grandma can teach you some responsibility," he said, completely oblivious to how she treated me when he wasn't looking. As soon as he left for work, Granny cornered me in the laundry room. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she hissed, her wrinkled face twisted with anger, always trying to turn my son against me. I kept folding clothes, trying to ignore her. The flip phone was hidden in my sock, recording everything. "Your mother is a terrible influence on you," she continued, "teaching you to be sneaky and dishonest. It's in your blood, I suppose." I bit my tongue. Getting into an argument would only make things worse. "You know, your father is finally starting to see what I've known all along," she said, leaning closer, "that you're just like your mother, foreign, different, not really part of this family." That stung more than I wanted to admit. I'd always felt caught between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. Granny knew exactly where to hit to make it hurt the most. "Millie, now she's a proper Irish girl," Granny went on, smiling now. "She understands family loyalty, not like you." I finished folding the last towel and turned to leave, but Granny grabbed my arm, her bony fingers digging into my skin. "I know what you're up to," she whispered, "and it won't work. My son will always choose me over you and your mother. Remember that." She finally let go, and I hurried out of the room, my heart pounding. I checked the phone later. The recording had worked perfectly, but would it be enough? It was just Granny being mean, not actual proof of her and Millie's schemes. Over the next few days, I collected more recordings. Granny telling my mom that her cooking was probably poisoned with foreign spices. Millie laughing with Granny about how they had my dad wrapped around their fingers. Small moments of cruelty and manipulation that added up to a clear pattern. But I needed something bigger, something my dad couldn't ignore. My chance came when Granny suggested a family meeting to discuss my behavioral issues. "I'm worried about Tara," she told my dad, fake concern dripping from her voice. "Her jealousy of Millie is getting worse, and the way she treats me, no respect at all." My dad nodded solemnly. "I've noticed it too." I sat there, fuming silently, the flip phone recording in my pocket. My mom tried to defend me, saying I was just going through a difficult phase, but Dad shut her down immediately. "This isn't about you, May," he snapped. My mom's face fell, and she stared at her hands in her lap. Millie, sitting next to Granny, had this smug little smile on her face. She was enjoying this, watching our family fall apart because of her lies. "I think Tara needs professional help," Granny announced. "There's a place my friend's grandson went to. Very strict, very effective." My stomach dropped. Were they talking about sending me away to some kind of facility? "It's a bit expensive," Granny continued, "but I'd be willing to help with the cost for my son's peace of mind." My dad actually looked grateful. "Thanks, Mom. I'll look into it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were planning to ship me off somewhere just because I'd exposed Millie's lies. I glanced at my brother, who looked as horrified as I felt. After the meeting, I retreated to my room and played back the recording. It was all there. Granny's manipulation, my dad's blind acceptance, Millie's quiet gloating. But would it be enough? My dad seemed so determined to believe the worst about me. The next day, I was cleaning the bathroom when I found something interesting. Millie's diary, hidden behind the towels. I knew I shouldn't read it, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I flipped it open and hit the jackpot. Pages and pages of Millie writing about how she and Granny were working together to get rid of Mom and teach Tara a lesson. She even detailed how she'd stolen my things and planted some of them in Mom's closet. I quickly took photos of the most damning pages using the flip phone. This was exactly what I needed. Proof in Millie's own handwriting. I carefully put the diary back exactly where I found it and finished cleaning. That night, I showed Bradley the photos and the recordings I'd collected. "This is crazy," he whispered, scrolling through the evidence. "Millie's completely lost it, and Granny is just encouraging her." "I need to show Dad," I said, "but he'll never believe me unless he sees it with his own eyes." Bradley thought for a moment. "What if we set a trap? Get them to reveal their true colors when Dad's around." It was risky, but what choice did I have? We came up with a plan. Bradley would tell Dad he needed help with something in the garage at exactly 7 p.m. tomorrow. Meanwhile, I would confront Millie about her diary, recording the whole thing. If all went well, Dad would overhear everything. The next day dragged by slowly. I kept checking the time, nervous about our plan. What if it backfired? What if Dad still didn't believe me? I could end up in an even worse situation. Finally, 6:55 p.m. arrived. I positioned myself in the living room, where I knew Millie would be watching her favorite show. The flip phone was recording in my pocket. Bradley had gone to get Dad. Hey, Millie, I said casually, sitting down next to her. I found something interesting today. She barely looked at me. Whatever. Your diary, I said quietly. I know what you and Granny are planning. That got her attention. Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide with panic before she quickly composed herself. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice trembled slightly. Really? So you didn't write about stealing my stuff and planting it in Mom's closet? Or about how you and Granny are trying to convince Dad to send me away? Millie's face flushed red. You had no right to read my private diary, and you had no right to frame me and turn Dad against me, I shot back. Why are you doing this, Millie? What did I ever do to you? For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but then it vanished, replaced by cold anger. You've always been Mom's favorite, she hissed. Little perfect Tara who gets all the attention. Well, now I have Granny, and soon Dad will love me more too. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This is about attention? You're destroying our family because you're jealous? Millie laughed, a harsh sound, nothing like her normal laugh. Granny says Mom never belonged in this family anyway. She's just using Dad to stay in America. I was so shocked I couldn't speak for a moment. That's the most raucous thing I've ever heard. Mom loves Dad. She loves all of us. Whatever. Millie rolled her eyes. Once you're sent away to that special school Granny found, things will be better around here. Dad's already filling out the application. My blood ran cold, so they really were planning to send me away. I needed to push harder, get her to reveal more. And what about all the stuff you stole from me? My bracelet from Mom? My money? Millie smirked. Some of it's in Mom's closet. The rest I gave to Granny to sell. She says Asian junk can fetch good money from the right buyers. I was about to respond when I heard a noise behind me. I turned to see my dad standing in the doorway, his face pale with shock. Bradley stood behind him, giving me a subtle thumbs up. Dad! Millie jumped up, instantly switching to her innocent act. Tara's harassing me again. She's making up lies about me and Granny. But for once, my dad didn't immediately take her side. I heard what you said, Millie, about the stealing, about sending your sister away. Millie's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. I was just joking. Tara made me say those things. She's always manipulating everyone. Give me your phone, Dad said, his voice unnervingly calm. What? Why? Millie clutched her phone to her chest. Now, Millie. Reluctantly, she handed it over. Dad started scrolling through it, his expression growing darker by the minute. I realized he must be finding the text between her and Granny. These messages to Grandma, he said slowly, about getting rid of your mother, about framing Tara. What is this? Millie burst into tears, real ones this time. Granny said it would be better for everyone if Mom went back to China. She said you'd be happier with a real Irish wife. The room fell silent. My mom appeared in the doorway, having heard the commotion. The look on her face broke my heart, a mixture of hurt and resignation, like she'd always suspected this but hoped it wasn't true. May, my dad said, turning to her. I had no idea. I swear. My mom just nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe him. How could she? He'd ignored the signs for years. Dad turned back to Millie. Where is the stuff you stole from Tara? Between sobs, Millie admitted that some was hidden in her room, some in Mom's closet, and the rest had been given to Granny. Dad sent Bradley to check Mom's closet, and sure enough, he returned with my missing bracelet and several other items. I think we need to have a serious talk with Grandma, Dad said grimly. The next day, Dad called Granny and asked her to come over. He didn't tell her what it was about, just that it was important. I was nervous all morning, wondering how this confrontation would go. Granny was a master manipulator. Would Dad finally see through her act? When Granny arrived, she immediately sensed something was wrong. Her eyes darted around the living room where we were all gathered, lingering suspiciously on me. What's this about, Timothy? She asked my dad, using her frail old lady voice. Dad took a deep breath. Mom, Millie told us everything. About the stealing, the lies, the plan to send Tara away, and your comments about May. Granny's face hardened, the fragile old lady act dropping away instantly. That girl is lying. I would never do such things. We have proof, Dad said, holding up Millie's phone. Text messages, photos, and Tara recorded some of your conversations. Granny's eyes flashed with anger. You'd take the word of these half-breeds over your own mother? The slur hung in the air like poison. Dad flinched as if she'd slapped him. They're my children, he said quietly. And May is my wife. I've let you disrespect them for years, and I'm ashamed of myself for that. Granny switched tactics, her eyes filling with tears. After all I've done for you, raising you alone after your father died, sacrificing everything for you, this is how you repay me? It was the same emotional blackmail she'd been using on him his whole life. I held my breath, wondering if he would cave as he always had before, but something had changed. Dad stood straighter, more resolute than I'd ever seen him. I'm grateful for everything you did for me growing up, he said firmly, but I can't allow you to hurt my family anymore. I think it's best if you don't come around for a while. Granny looked stunned. You're choosing them over me? Your own mother? I'm choosing what's right, Dad replied. And what you've been doing isn't right, Mom. Granny turned to Millie, who was sitting quietly on the couch, eyes downcast. Tell them, Millie. Tell them I was just trying to help this family. But Millie just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have listened to you, Granny. I was wrong. Granny's face contorted with rage. Ungrateful brats, all of you. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. You'll regret this, Timothy. Mark my words. After she left, the house felt lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. Dad turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse. Tara, I owe you an apology. I should have believed you from the beginning. I wanted to be angry, to make him feel as bad as I had these past weeks. But seeing the genuine regret on his face, I just nodded. Yeah, you should have. He turned to my mom next, taking her hands in his. May, I'm so sorry. I had no idea how bad it was, how she treated you when I wasn't around. Mom gave him a sad smile. I tried to tell you many times, Timothy. You didn't want to hear it. I know, he admitted. I was wrong. So wrong. Finally, he looked at Millie, who was still crying quietly on the couch. As for you, young lady, we have a lot to discuss about your behavior. Millie nodded miserably. I know what I did was terrible. I just wanted what? Dad prompted. To feel special, she whispered. Granny made me feel special, like I was her favorite. I suddenly remembered all the times Millie had been overlooked growing up. She wasn't as academically gifted as me or as athletic as Bradley. She was just Millie, the middle child who often got lost in the shuffle. That doesn't excuse what you did, Dad said firmly. You hurt your sister and your mother deeply. There will be consequences. I know, Millie said. Then she looked at me, her eyes red from crying. Tara, I'm really sorry for everything. The stealing, the lies, all of it. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, but I appreciated the apology. It's going to take time, Millie. You can't just say sorry and expect everything to be okay. She nodded, understanding. I'll do whatever whatever it takes to make it up to you, to all of you. Over the next few days, our family started the slow process of healing. Dad changed all the locks on the house and made it clear to Granny that she wasn't welcome unless she could treat everyone with respect. She called several times, alternating between tearful pleas and angry accusations, but Dad stood firm. Millie returned all my stolen items and even used her savings to replace the things Granny had sold. She started seeing a therapist to work through her jealousy issues and the manipulation she'd experienced from Granny. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a start. As for me, I was just relieved that the truth had finally come out. My dad apologized to me properly, acknowledging how he'd failed to protect me and Mom from Granny's racism and cruelty. He promised to do better, to listen more, and assume less. I was blind because I didn't want to see, he admitted one night as we sat on the porch together. It was easier to believe Granny was just a bit old-fashioned than to accept that she was raucous toward my own wife and children. I nodded, understanding a little better now. It's hard to admit when someone you love is doing something wrong. That's no excuse, he said firmly. I should have stood up for you and your mom years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. It wasn't perfect. We still had a lot of issues to work through as a family. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and some wounds take time to heal. But for the first time in years, I felt like we were moving in the right direction. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending Granny's behavior was acceptable. One evening, about a month after the confrontation, Millie knocked on my bedroom door. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. Can we talk? She asked hesitantly. I nodded, making space for her on my bed. We sat in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke. I've been thinking a lot about why I did what I did, she said quietly. My therapist says I was looking for validation in the wrong places, that I felt invisible in this family. I listened, trying to see things from her perspective. Had we really made her feel that way? Granny gave me attention, Millie continued. She made me feel important, special. But the price was betraying my own family, and that was wrong. So wrong. She looked at me, her eyes sincere. I know I hurt you, Tara, and Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want you to know I'm really trying to change. For the first time, I saw my sister clearly, not as the annoying middle child or the manipulative brat she'd become under Granny's influence, but as a person struggling to find her place in our family. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it helped me understand. It'll take time, I told her honestly, but I believe you're trying. That's a start. She smiled tentatively, and I found myself smiling back. We weren't best friends again overnight, but it was a beginning, a chance to rebuild what Granny had tried so hard to destroy. As for Granny, she eventually stopped calling altogether. Dad heard from his cousin that she was telling everyone we'd abandoned her in her old age, playing the victim as usual. But this time, her manipulation didn't work on us. We were stronger now, more united as a family. Sometimes I think about that birthday dinner, how it became the catalyst for all this change. If Millie hadn't pushed me too far that night, would we still be living under Granny's toxic influence? Would Dad ever have seen the truth? I don't know, but I do know that standing up for the truth, even when it's hard, even when no one believes you at first, is always worth it in the end. Our family isn't perfect, whose is? But at least now we're facing our problems together instead of letting them tear us apart. I was so relieved when Dad finally saw through Millie and Granny's act. For the first time in forever, I felt like someone was actually on my side, but I should have known it wouldn't be that simple. The very next morning, I woke up to shouting downstairs. I quickly threw on some clothes and rushed down to find Dad and Mom in a heated argument. She's my mother, May. I can't just cut her off completely, Dad was saying, his face red with frustration. Mom looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept all night. After everything she's done, the racism, the manipulation, using our daughter against us, I froze on the stairs, my heart sinking. Was Dad already backtracking? Bradley appeared beside me looking equally concerned. What's happening? He whispered. I think Dad's having second thoughts about Granny, I whispered back. We watched as Dad paced the living room. I'm not saying what she did was right, but she's 85 years old, May. She's set in her ways. Being old isn't an excuse for racism, Mom replied firmly, or for turning Millie against her own family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything we'd been through, Dad was still making excuses for Granny. I marched down the rest of the stairs, unable to stay quiet. Dad, are you serious right now? I demanded. After everything Granny did to me, to Mom, to our whole family, Dad looked startled to see me. Tara, this is between your mother and me. No, it's about all of us, I insisted. Granny has been horrible to us for years. She literally tried to get me sent away to some facility. Dad sighed heavily. She called me this morning. She was crying, saying she's all alone, that she's sorry. I rolled my eyes so hard it actually hurt. And you believed her? Again? She's my mother, Tara. And I'm your daughter, I shouted, surprising even myself with my outburst. But you were ready to ship me off based on her lies. The room fell silent. Dad looked like I'd slapped him. Good. Maybe he needed that wake-up call. Millie appeared in the doorway, looking small and uncertain. Dad, Granny's not really sorry, she said quietly. She texted me last night saying we should keep our special plan going, that you'd come around eventually. Dad's face changed as Millie held out her phone, showing him the messages. I watched as he read them, his expression hardening with each swipe. She said I should pretend to be sorry, and then slowly convince you that Tara and Mom are the real problem, Millie continued, her voice shaking. I don't want to do that anymore. It was wrong. I was genuinely surprised by Millie's honesty. Maybe she really was trying to change. Dad sat down heavily on the couch, staring at Millie's phone. I can't believe this, he muttered. She's still trying to manipulate us. Believe it, Mom said firmly. This is who she's always been, Timothy. You just never wanted to see it. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dad looked up, his eyes clearer than I'd seen them in a long time. You're right, he said to Mom. All of you are right. I've been making excuses for her my entire life, and it stops now. He stood up and pulled out his own phone. I'm going to call her and make it absolutely clear that she is not welcome in our lives unless she makes real, genuine changes. No more manipulation, no more racism, no more pitting us against each other. I held my breath as he dialed Granny's number and put it on speaker. She answered on the second ring, her voice instantly switching to that fake, fragile tone. Timothy, is that you, my darling boy? Yes, Mom, it's me, Dad replied, his voice steady. I'm calling about the text you sent Millie last night. There was a pause. What texts? I didn't send any texts. You know how bad I am with technology. Dad's jaw tightened. Stop lying, Mom. Millie showed me everything. You're still trying to manipulate my family, and I won't stand for it anymore. How dare you speak to your mother this way? Granny's voice instantly changed, the frail act dropping away. After everything I've done for you, what you've done is try to destroy my marriage and hurt my children, Dad said firmly. I'm setting a boundary, Mom. You are not welcome in our home or our lives until you can treat my wife and children with respect. Real respect, not just when I'm around. You ungrateful. I'm not finished, Dad interrupted, something I'd never seen him do before with Granny. If you want any relationship with me going forward, you need to apologize to May for years of racist comments. You need to apologize to Tara for trying to get her sent away. And you need to stop manipulating Millie. Granny was silent for a moment. Then she laughed, a cold sound that sent chills down my spine. You'll regret this, Timothy. Mark my words. Blood is thicker than water. You'll come crawling back when you realize what you've thrown away. Goodbye, Mom, Dad said quietly, and hung up. The room was silent again. I couldn't quite believe what had just happened. Dad had actually stood up to Granny. Really stood up to her, not just temporarily. He turned to face us all, looking both sad and determined. I'm sorry, he said, to all of you. I should have done that years ago. Mom went to him and took his hand. It's never too late to do the right thing. For the first time in forever, I felt like our family might actually be okay. The next few weeks were weird, but in a good way. Without Granny's toxic influence, our house felt lighter somehow. Dad was more present, actually listening when Mom or I talked instead of just waiting for his turn to speak. Millie was making a genuine effort to be less manipulative, though she still had her moments. Old habits die hard, I guess. One night, about a month after the phone call with Granny, I was helping Mom with dinner when she suddenly asked, "Are you still angry with your father?" I paused, knife hovering over the carrots I was chopping. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me is. He believed Granny and Millie over me for so long, but another part of me gets it. It's hard to accept that someone you love is toxic. Mom nodded thoughtfully. Your father grew up with only your grandmother after his father died. She was his whole world. It's difficult to see flaws in the people who raised you. I guess, I said, resuming my chopping, but he should have protected you better. Protected all of us. Yes, he should have, Mom agreed, surprising me with her directness, and he knows that now. He's trying to make amends. I thought about how Dad had been making an effort to spend one-on-one time with each of us kids. How he'd started learning to cook some of Mom's favorite dishes from her homeland. Small things, but meaningful. I'm working on forgiving him, I said finally. It's just going to take some time. Mom squeezed my shoulder. That's fair. Just don't hold on to the anger forever. It only hurts you in the end. A week later, we got a surprise visitor. I was doing homework in the living room when the doorbell rang. Dad answered it, and I heard him gasp, "Mom, what are you doing here?" I froze. Granny was here? I quickly texted Bradley and Millie, who were upstairs. SOS. Granny's at the door. I crept to the hallway to see what was happening. Granny stood on our porch, looking smaller somehow, less intimidating. She wasn't wearing her usual perfectly pressed outfit, but instead had on a simple sweater and pants. "I came to talk," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharpness. "If that's all right." Dad hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. "We can talk in the living room." I quickly retreated to the couch, pretending I'd been there all along. Granny's eyes widened slightly when she saw me, but she just nodded in greeting. "Is everyone home?" she asked Dad. "I'd like to speak to the whole family if possible." Dad looked uncertain, but went to call everyone down. Soon we were all gathered awkwardly in the living room, no one quite sure what was happening. Granny stood in the center, looking at each of us in turn. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since our last conversation," she began, "and I've realized some things about myself that aren't very flattering." I exchanged skeptical glances with Bradley. Was this another manipulation tactic? "My generation grew up with certain beliefs," Granny continued, "about people who were different from us. I never questioned those beliefs, never thought I needed to." She turned to Mom. "May, I've been unfair to you from the beginning, more than unfair. I've been cruel and rackist, and there's no excuse for that." Mom's expression remained neutral. "No, there isn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness," Granny said, surprising me. "I don't deserve that yet. I'm just acknowledging what I did was wrong. Very wrong." She looked at me next. "Tara, I treated you terribly. I tried to make you feel bad about yourself, about your heritage. And recently, I tried to convince your father you needed to be sent away. That was unforgivable." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Granny turned to Millie. "And you, dear, I manipulated you, used your insecurities to turn you against your family. That was perhaps my greatest sin." Millie's eyes filled with tears. "I let you do it," she whispered. "I went along with everything. Because I made you feel special when you needed it most," Granny replied. "I took advantage of that need. It wasn't your fault." Finally, she looked at Dad. "Timothy, I failed you as a mother. A good mother protects her child's family, not tries to destroy it. I'm sorry for putting you in impossible positions, for making you choose." The room was silent for a long moment. I was trying to process what was happening. Was Granny actually apologizing? Genuinely apologizing? Dad was the first to speak. "What brought this on, Mom?" Granny sighed heavily. "After you cut me off, I was angry. Furious, actually. I spent weeks telling anyone who would listen what an ungrateful son I had." She paused, looking embarrassed. Then my bridge partner Martha said something that hit home. She said, "If all 3 of your grandchildren and your daughter-in-law have a problem with you, maybe the problem isn't them." It made me think, really think, for the first time. "So you had a complete personality change because of something your bridge partner said?" I asked skeptically. Granny actually smiled a little. "No, not a complete change. I'm still stubborn and set in my ways, but I started seeing a therapist. At my age. Can you imagine? That was genuinely surprising." Granny had always scoffed at therapy, calling it nonsense for weak people. "She's been helping me understand why I felt so threatened by your mother," Granny continued, looking at us kids. "Why I tried to control everything. It doesn't excuse what I did, but I'm trying to be better." No one knew quite what to say. This was so unexpected that we were all a bit stunned. "I don't expect you to welcome me back with open arms," Granny said into the silence. "I just wanted you to know that I'm working on myself. And if you're ever willing to give me another chance, I'd like to try to be the grandmother and mother-in-law you all deserve." With that, she turned to leave. Dad walked her to the door, and I could hear them talking quietly but couldn't make out the words. When he came back, we all looked at him expectantly. "Well, that was unexpected," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Do you believe her?" Mom asked. Dad thought for a moment. "I think I do. She seemed genuinely remorseful, but that doesn't mean we need to rush into anything." "So what happens now?" Bradley asked. "Now we take it slow," Dad replied. "Maybe meet in public places occasionally. See if her actions match her words. It's going to take time to rebuild trust, if that's even possible." I wasn't sure how I felt about all this. Part of me wanted to believe Granny could change, but another part remembered all the hurt she'd caused. Over the next few months, we did exactly what Dad suggested. We met Granny for lunch a few times, always in restaurants where she had to be on her best behavior. To my surprise, she actually seemed different. She asked Mom questions about her childhood in China and actually listened to the answers. She complimented my academic achievements without adding backhanded comments about my appearance. She even apologized to Bradley for never showing interest in his hobbies. With Millie, she was especially careful, making sure not to play favorites or try to create divisions. I could tell it was hard for her sometimes. Old habits really do die hard, but she was making a genuine effort. One day, about 6 months after her surprise apology, we invited Granny over for dinner. It was the first time she'd been in our house since everything went down. I was nervous, half expecting her to revert to her old ways once she was back on familiar territory, but she didn't. She brought a homemade Irish soda bread that she'd baked herself, along with a Chinese tea set she'd bought for Mom. Martha helped me find it at an authentic shop, she explained. The owner assured me it's traditional. Mom seemed touched by the gesture. It's beautiful, thank you. Dinner was nice, not perfect, not without awkward moments, but nice. Granny asked me about college applications and actually seemed interested in my answers. She told Bradley his new haircut suited him. She complimented Millie on her art project without trying to make it into a competition between us siblings. After dessert, as we all sat around the table, Granny cleared her throat. I want to thank you all for giving me another chance, she said. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful nonetheless. Dad reached over and squeezed her hand. We're taking it one day at a time, Mom. And that's where we are now, taking it one day at a time. Granny still slips up occasionally. Old prejudices don't disappear overnight, but she catches herself and apologizes. She's trying, really trying, and that counts for something. As for our family, we're stronger now. Dad stands up for Mom and us kids when needed. Mom feels more comfortable expressing her heritage in our home. Millie is working through her issues with a therapist and becoming more secure in herself. Bradley is just Bradley, the most chill one of us all. And me, I'm learning that people can change if they really want to. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but it does mean moving forward. That family is complicated and messy and sometimes really difficult, but worth fighting for. I still don't completely trust my granny. I'm not sure I ever will, but I'm willing to give her the chance to earn a place in our lives again, on our terms this time, not hers.